had a wonderful life, and I had some great parents and a beautiful family after marriage with Yvonne. But I've been greatly blessed all my life, and if if uh, if I could have my life over again, I don't think there'd be very much I would change in it. We began, as you know, most of the things that I remember was growing up in American Fork. Uh, I was a typical young boy going to first grade, second grade. There's one man that I went with that uh, when he was a little boy, the same age as I, Stuart Adamson, lived down in by the Utah Lake, and he and I spent much time together because I lived up a little higher up the road than he did. But we went to the first grade together and exchanged friendships, probably more than with any other people. Lamar Graff was another one that lived down there, down near the Utah Lake. And my parents, my mother worked. She was a magnificent seamstress, and she made all the brides of the dresses for marriage. She made all the dresses for the queens of the various celebrations in American Fork. She is a magnificent seamstress, and she wrote, her penmanship was just superb. Mother was from Switzerland and married my dad sometime later. She came over to this country and met my dad, and the two of them were great parents. My father was a farmer. He had what they call a dry farm out in the Cedar Valley area, which doesn't require a lot of irrigation. It's a different seed that they used at that particular time. So anyway, we grew up in American Fork. I spent all my grade school there, and then went into junior high, still with the same friends down in American Fork, or friends from down near our home, near the Utah Lake. I went to junior high, and our class pretty much grew up together. We went to high school where it was a typical high school. It was a nice physical facility that we attended school in. The school has been now torn down, and we have the memories of its existence. We've had class reunions up until 1963. Or let's say, I think, no, I'm trying to remember when we graduated. But we grew up in American Fork, and then at the early age of when I was in the late I can't remember the exact, 1941 is when I graduated from high school, And then I went to the University of Utah and worked at the same time. And I went there, I think, two quarters. Then I went into the Marine Corps. And there were 5 of us that left from Salt Lake City to, that's where we were selected, at Salt Lake. There were, I think, 5 of us there who were selected, and we were shipped to California at the camp down there. And I think the first day that we got at the Marine Corps Center, we were issued an 80-pound pack to carry, and a rifle was issued to us. The drill instructor took us out on the beach where heavy sand was, and they had us hold our rifles at high port. That's where you hold it above your head. And they said, "Now we're going to run until we're exhausted." And that was one of the entry tests that the Marine gave us. So the 5 of us started out with the big group, and of the 5, 2 of us finished the course, and the other 3 were not accepted in the Marine Corps because they didn't make that first test. So 2 of the 5 remained, and from there we were shipped to San Diego, where we went into boot camp training. The course lasted 12 months, and we started out and began to condition ourselves for the rugged Marines, and it was quite a test. And following that boot camp training, we were put aboard a ship, and we were shipped overseas. We were on the boat 40 days, and it was because we were on a regular troop ship, and you got into the war zone just after you crossed the equator, and the Japanese airplane carrying some of its top pilots they were flying in an attempt to sink any American ship they could. One of our ships in that convoy got straight. They had I'm going very fast, so I've got to get myself organized here. But some 50 of our troops were shot and killed on that boat of ours, and they had burial at sea for those 50 men, and they had the burial at sea, which was very sad. We went on to Guadalcanal. We'd been on the boat for, as I said, 40 days. And we went ashore at Guadalcanal, there in the Solomon Islands. We heard that the occupants of that island were not just the enemy, but the what they call the ex-headhunters, the natives that lived there. And we had some experiences with those natives that was quite interesting. But after we secured that island, we went back aboard ship. Of course, we trained at Guadalcanal for the next invasion. And as I might say, when we landed initially on Guadalcanal, we went ashore. I had some troops to look after, and we came in platoons, and I was in charge of one of the platoons. We got about 100 yards inshore at Guadalcanal, and we saw a small monument that had been erected by the Seabees to welcome our members. And this particular monument had in front of it itself some signs welcoming us to that island. But this particular monument that was erected had a sign over the tops of 4 graves with an outline of a Marine in each of these 4. And over the first sign, it had a message to we who were just in fresh from America. And it was written by a Marine who had gone down for the full count. And it said, and it was a message sent to we who might have the good fortune of being shipped back home. And the sign said, from this fallen Marine, when you go home, tell them of us and say, for their tomorrow, we gave our today. And it was then that I realized that we were in for a long struggle with the islands in the Pacific. And we trained there after we had been in combat for a while. We trained there for the subsequent invasion, which was Guam. And we really trained hard because it would be a tough battle. And we went into we all went on troop ships there in the Pacific, and we went up to Guam, which was in the Mariana Islands. And we didn't know how bad this would be, but we knew we were in for a good fight because it was heavily loaded with the enemy. We went ashore, many casualties we had, and we finally secured that island of Guam, which was the main island in that number of the islands there. It was a battle that took many lives. We lost some 18 of our good Mormon boys in that invasion. I was made president of the LDS boys, where we met every Sunday, and they were from different platoons and different troops within the 3rd Marine Division. Some of those battles got into hand-to-hand combat, and you had to be in a fighting spirit to face these enemy Japanese troops, but because they always were giving their life for their invasions, and it was one of those situations where the commanding general will tell them in advance, you're expected to, before you die, you're expected to kill 10 Marines, each one of you. And then you go for it to give your life for your country there in Japan. So, having lost 18 of our religions, which was LDS actually, it was quite an experience there. But we did manage to dedicate their graves and to send pictures back to their parents. And anyway, from Guam, where we trained, where we had been training, from Guam, we went into another invasion, which would have been my 3rd invasion, and we had no idea where that would be. We opened our orders 3 days after we left Guam, and we opened our new objective, which was called Iwo Jima, which turned out to be the worst battle that the Marines had ever had in their history. And it was considered the worst in the war. More casualties were lost in this invasion than any other invasion. And I can't tell you, no, we were told that the island of Iwo Jima had been bombed for 17 or 18 days so that the resistance would be so much less. But we discovered that after we got in there, we discovered that the number of the enemy was underestimated, and that we knew that we would be in for a royal battle. I want to say that, and then at that particular time, General MacArthur, who was over the Allied forces, shortchanged some of the troops that he said would be sent up to help in the invasion. They were about 1/3 of the troops that we were going to use, but they didn't show up because they were used in some other invasion further south. We opened our new assignment, our 3rd Division, and it was to capture or take command of the next island. It was a stepping stone to Japan, and we knew it, and so did Japan. So the commanding general of the Japanese army instructed his people that this was the front doorstep to the main part of Japan, their main island, and so he said we must do everything possible to hang on to this particular island. So anyway, little did we realize the battle that would ensue, and not ever having heard of Ebo, we assumed it was a typical invasion for the Marines. The Marines were assigned, as you all know, to initiating any combat out in the Pacific, and then the Army or the Navy would come in to occupy the island after we took over. So we proceeded on to Iwo Jima, which was a relatively short distance from Guam. We didn't have any idea about the resistance that we would meet. We proceeded on, and we saw Mount Suribachi when we were about 50 miles out. That's a hill that's supposed to be about 535 feet high, and it's 7 square miles in size, and it was an absolute strategic point for us to take it, because our B-29s that would fly from Guam to Japan, drop their bombers and proceed back to Guam, where the big airfields could handle these largest planes. So anyway, we proceed up to the northwest from where we were, and we see that Mount Suribachi, which is the highest point on the island, and plan for the initial invasion. We finally got there, and we learned what invasion it was and what waves we would be going in on. And so we thought we could secure that island within 36 hours. Well, 36 hours after the first invasion, we hadn't even established a beachhead. The first wave, very few Marines got ashore. They died right in the waters, or their landing barge was blown to pieces, and it took the lives of the occupants with them. So the first wave didn't reach the shore. Just 1 or 2 of the Marines of the second unit, just 1 or 2 of them made it to shore, and it required the 3rd Marine Division to get the majority of the people in, and it was the bloodiest invasion we'd had. It was the worst thing we'd ever witnessed or experienced. The island, as I said, was 7 square miles. It had Mount Suribachi on the one end, the south end, and relatively flat the other part of Iwo. was an island comprised of sulfur. The aroma was terrible, and it seemed like there was a little wind always prevailing, and as a consequence, the beach was extremely rough because it had such an abrupt shape. There were big breakers in the water, and if the coxswain didn't go in straight, it would be trouble. And very few got to go in straight. They were blasted with every kind of a weapon. And they could almost put a mortar in your back pocket because they would come out on rails in Mount Suribachi, and then after they'd fire their heavy weapons, they would retract and go back in shelter. And then they had some 3 or 4 miles of tunnels on the flat island that they would go into when we would try to establish a beachhead. They'd come out and use their machine guns. So this proved to be one of the roughest landings ever made out in the Pacific. The fight, the battle we had there was the worst in Marine Corps history. And every piece of literature you read, which is written with knowledge that was true, it was the roughest invasion the Marine Corps ever had, and it was where we thought we could secure this island in 36 hours. We hadn't even established a beachhead by that time. And the number of casualties we had was just insurmountable. I got injured on the landing, and our boat got hit also. And anyway, we lost, I don't know what percentage of our people, but this is where I received a serious injury, and I was laid on a stretcher right on the beach and would be taken back aboard the hospital ship. Anyway, I ended up the next day in a hospital ship, and the message that kept coming across or from the Marines on shore was, please send more corpsmen, more corpsmen, more corpsmen. They became priceless because they had every kind of a problem. We who were casualties, there was just not enough corpsmen to take care of the casualties. And I won't go into the details of my injury, but it was very painful, and I had to have the surgery done. I had some blocked kidneys, and they had to go in without any anesthetic to be operated on. Now, anyway, I was taken back aboard a hospital ship, and before we secured the island, my ship had gone back towards Guam, And by the way, before I left, I noticed the flag go up on Mount Suribachi while I was still on a stretcher. And the flag that went up was around right at the top, 535 yards high. But when that flag unfurled, all the ships, every one of them, large and small, totaled about over 800 ships. And every horn on every ship sounded its horn when that flag unfurled. And then the men on the beach screamed and yelled, and it was fantastic. That was a moment in time that we were so eager to hear, and the applauding and the screaming when that flag went up was something to behold. It took over 36 hours to get into to establish a beachhead, and it took us over 36 days and nights to capture that little 7-mile square island where the casualties were the highest and throughout the war. The casualties versus the territory that we had to capture. Anyway, you stop and think of 28,500 Marines that either met their death or were severely injured. Some were even sent to a hospital in Texas where they were so badly mixed up inside with limbs off and men that lost their limbs and arms and eyesight. It was a very sad experience. Anyway, I hope that you get to see some of the pictures and the movie. It was a movie, The Flags of Our Fathers, emanated from this invasion. There was another picture that I think Clint Eastwood directed, and I think there were 3 or 4 invasions of that island, and the casualties were the highest for any comparable invasion anywhere, either in the Pacific War or the one in Europe. So anyway, I've said about enough there, but I can then move on to upon reaching. I was taken by hospital ship from Iwo Jima to Guam, and I was in the hospital there at Guam for about 3 weeks, and then was taken by plane from Iwo. After I left Iwo to go back to Guam, I was flown from Guam to San Francisco. Well, no, before I got to San Francisco, they flew me to Hawaii. I think it was a triple hospital, a naval operation, or a naval Naval Hospital there, and I stayed there for another month, and then I was flown on to San Francisco and was put in then transported to a hospital in Farragut, Idaho, where I remained until I got a medical discharge, and my wife came up to greet me there. I was still not out of the woods yet, but I said I'd have to stay there at least 7.5 months, which I did, and then was medically discharged. Anyway, I went back to Provo with my wife, and I didn't know quite what to do. My nerves were badly shot, and I was still in pain. But I didn't know what choice to make. But my wonderful wife said, schooling is where you're going now. So she said, this is why you should go on with your education. And she convinced me that that's where I should go. So I went back to BYU. I flunked the first examination in zoology, and the professor said, I have an idea of what you've gone through, so we're not going to let this one exam hold you back. Go into this next examination and give it your best, and we'll go to the next step after that. Anyway, that was a great relief to hear the professor say he understood a little what I'd gone through. The next examination, I came in with the top grade, and that Yvonne did a great deal to assist me, and she should have received a T, putting husband through, because she helped me immensely. And she gave me encouragement. She said, I'll work until you get out of college. So I worked and studied and gave everything I had to it. And my system eventually settled down, and I was able to conduct myself like a normal human being, but it was not without some wonderful help from my wife, Yvonne. So from there, I went on, and they got me in the honor roll in the Intercollegiate Knights, and that was the honor roll for the students, the lower division, and then for the upper division, it was the Blue Keys. I first of all became president of the Intercollegiate Knights, and I was proud of that. And then the second honor roll was in the Blue Keys, where I was in that very prestigious fraternity, and got to be a member of that, and as well as become the student body president for the university, which they said was the largest landslide in history. I had an excellent ratio of votes to my opponent. So I was thrilled, and I think that year of my senior year was, without a doubt, the tops of my life. And I'll never forget that as I walked across the stage to get my degree. They gave me a standing ovation. The graduates did. It moved me to tears, and the accolades paid me were unbelievable. I really wasn't that good, but they said I was. So anyway, I'll never forget that. And that wraps up my academic. And so I'll pause a moment and resume it in just a few minutes. Thank you very much.